During COVID, John Oliver did a takedown piece on Tucker Carlson. And I wanted to revisit it because at the time that this piece came out, I was a John Oliver fan and not a Tucker Carlson fan. And so John Oliver makes the case here that Tucker Carlson is a violent white supremacist racist. And I thought it would be fun to kind of cover this and, basically debunk or I guess rebut some of his points. Now, I know that I can't show HBO's clips without getting in trouble, so I'm going to try to dance around this a little bit by doing my best John Oliver impersonation, and then just showing you the clips of the points he's making. So this is going to be a fun little experiment. We'll see if it works. And let's get into it. Here we go. So this is John Oliver from last week tonight's takedown of Tucker Carlson. So this very first point he makes here is about China and things that Tucker Carlson said about China. So let's listen to what Tucker Carlson says here. And then I will play the part of John Oliver and respond to the clip. Here we go.
Of a firestorm.
So we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars. It's a mockery of the U.S. military. While China's military becomes more masculine as it's assembled the world's largest navy, our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, whatever feminine means anymore, since men and women no longer exist.
What are
you performatively outraged wedge salad? How dare you say that China's military is better than ours? We need to do wars and stuff. And how dare you complain about, these feminized military people and us trying to have more trans and calling out that China's military is going to be more stronger than ours. And so, here he's showing how the Pentagon came out and denounced Tucker for saying that. And but is Tucker wrong about this? First of all, what does this have to do with him being a white supremacist? But second of all, is he wrong about this? The kind of degradation of the U.S. military. It gives credence to the conspiracy theory that Joe Biden and the Democrats are like bought out by the Chinese, that they're secretly, being influenced by the communists. So that's kind of, I think, the conspiracy theory connection that Tucker is trying to make here. And of course, he's a racist or an anti-trans for that.
Nationalism. Let's be literal for a minute. What is that exactly?
I don't even know what white nationalism means, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you now.
Why doesn't anyone ever define white supremacy? What is white supremacy? Can somebody tell us in very clear language what a white supremacist is?
Okay, first, very clear language.
First of all, Tucker Carlson looks like, I wrote this down. This is what he actually says. He has the befuddled face of a 13th century farmer who's having Bitcoin explained to him. But the point Tucker's making is a valid one. The term white nationalist is a dog whistle term that Democrats use to call someone a racist. A nationalist is someone who cares about their country. There are Black and Asian and Hispanic nationalists. And I think that it's easy to kind of try to paint someone like Tucker as a racist because he's a conservative. And as I get older, I'm not saying that I'm a conservative now, but I understand the mentality that, hey, we want to keep our lifestyle intact. We like the lifestyle we have, and we want to do what we can to preserve that. That's basically what Tucker is arguing for here. And, there's no denying that globalism is inevitable. We're going to live in a global economy. The world has been made smaller by communications and technology, and that's just inevitable. However, we can still be a sovereign country. We can still have, set borders. We can still have a set of laws that people have to adhere to come into the United States. We can do our best to stem the flow of illegally entering people, and has nothing to do with their race. It just so happens that the southern border is the most, porous, because it's the most landlocked and the most comfortable. If you try to come through Canada, you got to deal with forest and ice and all kinds of stuff like that. I'm sure people do it though. But because that happens to be the problem, it's easy to be like, oh, this guy's a racist against Mexicans. So the next little bit here, blah, blah, Tucker Carlson, racism, Tucker Carlson, racism, white supremacist, white nationalism. I've been told. I'm sitting at home during COVID calling Tucker a white supremacist. One of the things he talks about too in this piece is how much influence that Tucker wields. And if you listen to Tucker Carlson now, it's probably a good thing. He seems like a genuinely good person. And I say that with all sincerity. And you're going to see these clips that homie pulls to kind of illustrate what a racist he is. They actually work against him, especially now. So one of the things he pulls out is this kid who came out as trans, who's the son of the Stormfront, the white pride guy from Stormfront. This kid came out as trans, I guess, and speaks out against his parents and stuff. And so he went on CNN to do some propaganda against Tucker Carlson.
White supremacist site on the internet talk about just.
Emily watches Tucker Carlson's show once and then watches it on the replay because they feel that he is making the white nationalist talking points better than they have, and they're trying to get some tips on how to advance it.
Yeah, they watch it once to enjoy it and a second time to learn from it.
So yeah, this kid is saying that his parents, who are white supremacists, watch Tucker Carlson, which of course, Puff Daddy supported Hillary Clinton, which means that she is a, violent anti-woman sex trafficker too, right? Because they're associated, anyone who listens to P. Diddy is clearly supports sex trafficking. And, this is just the jump that these people have to make. A white supremacist watches Tucker Carlson and likes what he has to say. Therefore, Tucker Carlson is the voice of white supremacists. So just to keep going into this, pinching me bobbins, tea and crumpets. Oh, no. Drew Barrymore's one of my favorite people, and I try to watch her to learn how a kid can make a Shirley Temple while Stanley Tucci is drinking some wine behind him. Pinching me bobbins. All right. So here is, they kind of go into the history of who Tucker Carlson is right here. And John Oliver makes some great jokes about, how the only way he could be more white is if he were like ejaculating mayonnaise or something like that. So now they get into, why Tucker is a racist. And this quote right here is some of the best proof. Racial solidarity wasn't a working concept in my Southern California hometown. Most people barely had last names, much less ethnic identities. So what he's saying there is like, when he grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I don't know if he grew up in San Francisco, but he definitely grew up in Southern California. He's a rich kid, but he spent time in San Francisco among those people. And yeah, like that makes sense. Like people weren't really concerned about what your race was. And so John Oliver kind of illustrates how his dad married like the heiress of the Swanson college. And so this is kind of like how Tucker got into politics. He everyone else is at lunch. Can you do it? Someone called and needed someone to do something. So he got into a career on TV through the O.J. Simpson trial. And so as one of the major proofs that he's a racist, John Oliver shows this clip of Tucker talking. It's like his first thing he did after the O.J. Simpson trial. So check this out.
The race to race?
Oh, no, of course not. I mean, everybody is terrified of one thing. Whites are, of course, terrified of being called a racist. Blacks are terrified of being belittled. of course. I think we need actually probably less conversation about race. I think it might do us good were we to ignore the subject a little bit and treat each other as if there were no color boundary separating us. I think that might be helpful. I think we talk about it in some ways too much.
Okay. Only a racist would say something like that. You have to be a white guy who says that stuff like that. Why do we care about race? Because you're white. Because you're white. You don't know. You're white. And I'm white too. And I don't know why I'm saying this because I don't have any real reason to be commenting from the perspective of a person of color. I'm a white British guy who eats tea and crumpets and pinching me bobbins. So the next thing they talk about is Pat Buchanan. And so Tucker Carlson has kind of a complicated past to some degree. Now, obviously, that was very salient what he said, the discussion about race. It's like, what we shouldn't, have everything shouldn't be hyper focused around that. Now, I disagree with Tucker when he says there's no such thing as systemic racism and that kind of stuff, because that's a very provable reality. If you look at statistics and you just look at the things that are happening in the world, if you look at, the way that the police forces came out of slave patrols, there's all kinds of, the way that lynchings and all the kind of stuff that happened during Jim Crow, like there's just no doubt that is systemically tied. But the fact that Tucker Carlson doesn't believe that doesn't mean that he's a racist. It does mean that he's a little bit sheltered. He obviously grew up in a very rich neighborhood and, hasn't had to deal with a lot of the material realities that people of color or people of a lower income bracket have had to deal with. So the next thing Oliver does here is he tries to tie Tucker to Pat Buchanan. So at this point in time, Pat Buchanan was widely called a racist. Why? Because he made similar arguments to Tucker Carlson and all these people. And so the way that they were easily able to dismiss a voice like Pat Buchanan back in those days was to call him a racist. They did it to Ron Paul. They do it to everybody that they want to kind of push out of the conversation who's saying anything that might be, a little bit of a third rail. So at this point in time, too, Tucker was a conservative shill. So he goes on C-SPAN and basically talks shit about Pat Buchanan. So listen to what he says right here, and we'll talk about it.
Pat does raise issues that I think are important. Unfortunately, Pat Buchanan raises them in a way that I think is discredited. And when attacked, he can always fall back on the line, well, the tiny cabal that controls American politics doesn't like me because I speak truth to power. This is actually, incidentally, almost verbatim what he said the other day, that I offend the plutocracy, that I'm a wanted man by the inside the Beltway people, and in every sense cast himself as a victim who is sort of a Karen Silkwood of politics, someone who's so truthful that he's being hunted down by the conspiracy that runs Washington. I mean, it's all a bit much.
Yeah, you're right, Tucker.
Yeah, Tucker, that's what you do, buddy. Oh, that's what you do. Here's a clip of you 20 years ago before your political opinions changed, decrying the thing you do now. See, what Tekashi 6ix9ine, here's a pop culture reference because I want to make sure that you know that my writers pay attention to pop culture. So anyway, this whole thing right here is interesting because Tucker Carlson has said repeatedly that he renounced these views. He was a stand for the Iraq war. He was a neoconservative. And then he went to Iraq and realized that he was completely wrong about a lot of his viewpoints. And so what he's saying about Pat Buchanan right here, that he was an enemy of the plutocracy, 1,000% accurate and 1,000% applicable to Tucker Carlson today, because he is that person today. He wasn't that person when that clip was filmed, though. He was a neocon, and he has fully come out and addressed that and admitted that. So they pull these clips about him saying, oh, immigrants are going to make us poorer, dirtier, and more divided. And he's not wrong about that, but he's not pointing specifically to any race. The argument he's making is that economically, letting all these people pour into the country, they use up services and tax dollars that Americans could be using. And that is a valid point to make. There's nothing racist about that.
You've seen it a million times. It happens all the time. The enforcers scream racist on Twitter until everybody gets intimidated. It's a tactic, a well-worn one. Nobody thinks it's real.
this is what's happening to Daryl Cooper right now because he's touching third rails. I think, when I look at what's going on with the Daryl Cooper thing and why everyone's calling him a Nazi, my personal opinion is because of the Epstein piece he did. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. It's insane. He goes into full detail about who Epstein was, who he was tied to. It's in intricate detail. And so he's a racist, of course. He's a Nazi. Anti-Jew Nazi.
And it won't work with this show. We're not intimidated. We plan to try to say what's true until the last day. And the truth is, unregulated mass immigration has badly hurt this country's natural landscape.
Oh, fuck off, Tucker, you relentlessly indignant picket.
You relentlessly indignant picket fence. How dare you say that? Oh God, I'm an immigrant from Britain who became a naturalized citizen because I'm a very wealthy superstar. John Oliver just completely discredited himself with this kind of garbage. This is the proof that Tucker is a racist. So here's some proof. You got a picture of me bobbins. Here's some proof that Tucker Carlson is a violent racist who hates black people and wants them all to die.
There are many of us here who do like this country. We live here. We don't want to destroy it. We have every right to fight to preserve our nation and our heritage and our culture.
Wow. Preserve our heritage and culture.
Listen to what she says right here.
As long as our economy and political systems prioritize profit without considering who is profiting, who is being shut out, we will perpetuate this inequality. So we can.
I think there's probably a lot of points that Tucker would agree with her on here if you listen to the way he talks now. But I think that the way she's saying it too, she's framing it in kind of like a way that clearly offends
not
Tucker.
Stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
So that's what triggered Tucker Carlson. Listen to what he said.
The American economy and the American system of government, institutions that generations of Americans built over hundreds of years.
All right, there is already enough there.
Okay, this is his proof that Tucker Carlson is a racist.
Here who do like this country. We live here. We don't want to destroy it. We have every right to fight to preserve our nation and our heritage and our culture.
Wow, what a racist. So that is okay. So here's what this is the thing, and I have to again compare this to Daryl Cooper because they're putting words. John Oliver is literally putting words in Tucker's mouth and making this gigantic logical leap to say that what he's saying is this white supremacist, racist talking point. So this is from some kind of racist thing that some KKK guy said or something. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. So, and this is where he compares what Tucker said. We have to fight to preserve our nation and heritage. So, of course, like that's the same thing. Since Tucker said we have to fight to preserve our nation and our heritage, that means we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. He said nothing about white. He said American. But that's the jump that these people have to make. And then he goes on to make a very clever joke. Okay. He's clearly a racist, as you can see. He said something that I had to paraphrase. If you put this into Microsoft Word, the paperclip will come up and say, "Oh, you're a white supremacist. Look, see, I work for Bill Gates and Microsoft." And here's a joke about how the Bill Gates Microsoft clip has been watching YouTube, and it's been radicalized by YouTube, the place you're watching this clip now. Picture me bobbins. Tea and crumpets. Why is a fucking British guy telling Americans what's true and what's not to begin with? Like we jettisoned you guys. Now you're coming over here and telling me who's racist and who isn't. Get the fuck out of here. Sorry, Brits. I love you. But I wouldn't come over to Britain and be like, "Hey, you guys need to go elect, you guys need to elect Keir Starmer." All right. So we're winding down here. This is the evidence of bigotry
Western civilization is our birthright. It makes all good things possible. Undefended, it collapses. And so we've got to fight to preserve it.
It's a war with one side trying to erase all remnants of its opponent, in this case, Western civilization.
See, this is where, too, when Tucker gets into this stuff, that it's like the spiritual war shit that conservatives love to mythologize. It's not that. I mean, okay, you could say, okay, listen, I'll give it to you. It is good and evil, but the evil is people that want money. It has nothing to do with the erasure of civilization or blah, 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 blah. No, Tucker, it's not that deep. It's these fuckers make money by the problem staying in place. There are too many wealthy interests that benefit from an open border. That is why the problem can be. It's not because they're like trying to erase America forever and like kill civilization. No, they make money off a fucking open border. It's that simple. It's not this deep God versus Satan bullshit that you myth buyer people think it is, the fairy tale people.
The culture into which they're coming. The Western civilization we're talking about, superior to the culture that these immigrants are bringing.
Do you think it's possible to move?
Okay, and again, this is what the due distance people would call Western chauvinism, or what smart people would call Western chauvinism. It's not racism, but it definitely sounds racist. He's like, oh, well, people who aren't American, you know, this is old footage too. I think if you sat Tucker down now and looked around and say, like, you really think we live in a democracy, Tucker? Like, you really think that we're the best, that, you know, everybody like that comes from other countries, we should look down on, you know? I mean, he said this off the cuff, and it's kind of not very bright of him to say. It is very Western chauvinist, but again, it's not proof that he's a Nazi.
A large Muslim population into the West and successfully integrate them into Western culture. Have you seen that?
That's already
anywhere?
happened.
Yeah.
That's already happened. We already have a large integrated Muslim culture here. Jimmy Bobbins, sporting dick, racism. I'm on HBO. I'm an immigrant. Blah 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 blah. Jimmy Bobbins, Bubba the Love Sponge. So Tucker used to appear on Bubba the Love Sponge in the early 2000s, and he said this, 2008. Iraq is a crappy place. I just have zero sympathy for them or their culture, a culture where people just don't use to it. So that is racist, of course. But also that is Tucker before he changed his views. He was a neocon here. This is the same Tucker that said Pat Buchanan was dumb to call out the oligarchy and the plutocracy for trying to cancel him back in the 80s and 90s. That's how they canceled people. They just said, "Oh, he's a racist," clearly. So I think I have the clip. I'm gonna look, but I'm pretty sure I have the clip of Tucker talking about when he changed. Maybe not.
I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq War. Like, I actually did that. Can you imagine if you did that?
Well, what do you think? What is one of your biggest regrets in your career?
Oh, defending the Iraq War.
That is it?
Well, I've had a million regrets, not being more skeptical, calling people names when I should have listened to what they were saying. Look, when someone makes a claim, there's only one question that's important at the very beginning, which is the claim true or not?
This is the prime evidence of bigotry. Jimmy Bobbins, Tucker's a racist. Listen to what he said to this Mexican
I'm for getting along. I'm for colorblindness. I'm for tolerance, 100%. But I also think that if things radically change in your country, it's okay for you to say, what is this? And maybe I don't want to live in a country that looks nothing like the country I grew up in. Is that bigoted?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yes, you're a racist. Of course you're a racist. So, again, both sides do this. Both sides do the scary white people now. The Democrats are scary white people, and the Republicans are scary Muslims. They both do this crap. And the idea that Tucker Carlson is a violent white supremacist racist is completely ridiculous.
I just interviewed a guy who is a black nationalist socialist. Okay, so I'm obviously not much of a black nationalist. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'm not. And I'm not a socialist either. But this guy is facing prison time under the Biden DOJ because he said things they don't like about foreign policy. And I just interviewed the guy for an hour, and it was like, because on principle, you should be able to say what you think.
Is this a gentleman?
That's him right there.
4 Americans from a
Amalia
black empowerment
Shil-
organization work with Russian
Yeshatilla.
intelligence to spread propaganda, feds
Yes,
say.
to spread propaganda. Now, propaganda, first of all,
And so he kind of ends off by saying, like, look, even David Duke supports him. David Duke says some stuff, you know. And again, Hillary Clinton supports Puff Daddy. Hillary Clinton talked. Does that mean that she's a sex trafficker? No, it doesn't. It's the whole thing is ridiculous. So I will not agree that someone is a violent racist or a pedophile or any of those terrible things unless there is 100% confirmable evidence of them being just that. A bunch of cunts saying it on TV or on the internet does not make it true.